if you don't have a good product or service, doesn't get traction in the market, or is not priced properly, well, your cash flow, will continue to burn, and you ultimately will run out.
So welcome back to the business behind your business. And look, start of a new year, a lot of people are starting new ventures, looking to finally take that idea and turn it into a product, a commercial enterprise, and they need to go about starting their business. But what we've found is that a lot of people, they don't know what they're doing. When it comes to starting a business, it's a new venture, and there are a lot of traps for new players and a lot of, minefields that we need to avoid. But not to discourage you, it is a very worthwhile objective, and we like to encourage people to run their business, and that's why we have the business behind your business, to help people run great businesses, thriving businesses, and profitable businesses with the right advice. So today's guest is Peter Deans Peter Deans is from a lot of places at the moment. If I was to list all the places, and I'll mention a few. So Peter Deans' wealth of experience, been in banking and finance for a very long time, up to about 2018, and has moved his focus more into, helping small, medium businesses and that startup space, so helping people start their business. Peter's a board member of the RegTech Association, the chair and non-executive director of NerdWallet Australia, a non-executive director of Trade for Good, the founder of Not Without Risk as well, and also on a number of other, contributing to another publications such as the Company Director magazine, Director Today in India, FinCEA in Australia, the Asian Banker Singapore. A lot of experience, and we're privileged today to have Peter on the podcast, helping us understand why startups make mistakes and talk about a great tool that is now available to help you on your startup journey. So Peter Deans, welcome to the business behind your business.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here. Yes, I do say these days I'm never bored with the range of activities, and the variety I have in my day is fantastic. Actually, that actually what gets me out of bed is every day is different, and lots of interesting businesses and people that I cross paths with.
And look, you've been involved in a broad range of ventures, and you would have seen a lot of different, startup ventures, some successful, some not so successful. So you're well placed to understand what that works well and what are the steps that people are missing. And I think the great news for business owners or potential business owners everywhere is that you've brought all of that knowledge together in one place, which is the Start-Up Toolkit, a step-by-step guide for founders. I guess the first question there, Peter, is why is it necessary to have a step-by-step guide?
Thanks again, Paul. The book was released in early December, and I sort of went up to Hong Kong for their startup festival, which is called Entrepreneur Day. The book, I sort of had in my mind for a year or two that I did want to pull together, I guess certainly my knowledge and experience about not just startups, but just business management generally. When I started, my sort of finance career in the late 1980s and through the 1990s, the only real startups you ever saw were, essentially small businesses that someone wanted to start up in a more traditional mainstream, whether it's, retail, import, export, hospitality. Anything else, look, either didn't exist because we didn't have the technology platforms and this sort of whole startup ecosystem that we have today. It was really only the domain of established businesses to start up a new product or service or a new business line. And, even sources of equity and debt were pretty limited. You need to either know someone or have a business that could put equity in, or dare I say, go to the banks. And, banks are necessary evil. I worked for many in my career, but they would always want, what's your established, track record, show us your financial statements, show us your, cash flow forecasts. This is actually quite difficult to get a startup off the ground. Now, fast forward to this, fascinating world of innovation that we live in today. It is much easier to start up a business. And even, the book that I've written, the Start-Up Toolkit, it's sort of underneath sort of a bit of a publishing platform. Goru's the name, or the Goru Project, as I've called it. And essentially started up the Goru Business or Guru World about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, leading up to the book launch, and not difficult to do. Like, you can access a whole range of outsourced freelancers to support you, whether it's web design, comics, video, and if you have a look at the guruworld.com website, we've got a great little launch video there that was pulled together by a collection of people that supported me. And likewise, the publishing process of writing, designing a book and publishing a book 20, 30 years ago, you needed to basically go and talk to a publishing business to do it, but now it's much easier to do it. And of course, in the way of distributing, marketing a product or a service, it's much easier. So on one hand, I do say, and I say this in the book, it's actually very easy to launch a business now, or a new product or service. Getting it to market, promoting it, and creating a viable, profitable business out of that is as challenging as the original idea. And I think that's where I felt there was a gap in the market for the book. And the book unashamedly does target sort of under 35s Gen Z, because this is another fantastic thing, is that the kids coming out of high school and university, they're not thinking about the traditional career pathways that we would have had, and perhaps many of the listeners to the podcast would have as well. It's more about, I want to start up a business. What's sort of missing is, if they don't have access to professional business advisors, they're sort of left to their own devices a little bit, and the devices of the internet, where you get overwhelmed with advice and information on blogs and all the internet resources. I really wanted to pull together a short, sharp guide to help aspiring startup entrepreneurs and founders through the three steps, which is the idea development, business planning, and up and running, which takes you to launch, rather than having to spend weeks and months trawling the internet for what may not necessarily be the right advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, certainly we go back 20, 30 years, it was very much, you'd go to the accountant, but the accountant would only give you advice on the mechanics of setting up the business, not so much on, I guess, the planning and the development of your product and the launch on the scalability. And there are a lot of resources around, but I find there's a lot of either misinformation or incomplete information out there, but bringing it all together in one spot is what's missing. And one of the biggest challenges for a startup is actually understanding all the stages of their development and making sure they don't miss a step, because when you miss a step in that process, that's when you start to come unstuck. It's like that IKEA flat pack, and you think you've built it, and then at the end you've got all these pieces left over, and you wonder, which instructions did I miss? And then the thing falls over. It's great to have all those resources in one spot. So, yep, Peter, what are some of the main obstacles that business owners have faced? And as an example, like it's so easy to set up a business. We can set up a company instantly online, but what are the obstacles, or I guess the biggest mistakes that people are making that you've seen with working with startups?
Yeah, and I always like to not dwell on the negatives of the process, and certainly don't want to deter entrepreneurs from getting started. I think you mentioned there's a lot of steps in the book. I've documented over 120 steps to get yourself to business launch, and even each of those steps are little umbrella steps. One of the steps is develop a marketing plan, which of course is not just one activity. It's involves a whole lot of activities to sort of develop what's in the marketing plan, what's fit for your product or service or industry. I think in the earlier stages, really testing and validating that your idea for a product or service is needed. I think a lot of startups and small businesses develop a product. They do it very diligently. The product is well designed, works, but they find out there isn't really a market for it, or the economics of the cost to manufacture or deliver the product or service just means that the market won't pay for it. So I sort of encourage startup founders and entrepreneurs to spend quite a bit of time not just refining and developing the product or service, but making sure that it A, will get traction in the market, and it's financially viable. And I think the financially viable bit is as challenging as getting the right product or service. And this likewise is where, quite a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly if they're in, perhaps a more technical area like, medical, health tech, or, some of the more hardcore technology driven products or services, they can actually be costly to develop and deliver. And so you need to think about, and again, I talk about this in the book, about, think about your unit cost early on, even though you may not know still exactly what your unit cost will be at scale. And likewise, you may not have fully tested the pricing structure and how you're going to, your go-to-market pricing strategy. You do need to be thinking early on. This is almost touch intuitive, dare I say it. You need to be thinking on, is it really going to stack up? Is the financial viability going to be there? And again, if you've got, a founder or founders who may not be as strong on the financial side, I just say you need to quickly get yourself someone that's, good financial skills that can help you with the financial modeling of the product or service, both in terms of an enterprise, what will be your sales revenue, what will be your cost base, but also on a unit basis as well. Because if you don't get traction in the market and have built up a bit of infrastructure, people, for example, if you may run out of money very quickly. And I think there's been research done, over the last couple of years on, why do startups fail? And it's pretty well they run out of money, or the product or service doesn't get traction, or there isn't well developed, or doesn't get traction in the market. And of course, all three are a little bit interlinked. If you don't have a good product or service, doesn't get traction in the market, or is not priced properly, well, your cash flow, will continue to burn, and you ultimately will run out if you're very fortunate to have deep pockets yourself, or a deep pockets, partner, cornerstone shareholder, investor. But again, even those ones will eventually say, look, I just don't think the market's there for the product or service you've designed. As I said, I don't want to dwell on the negatives, but time spent in that early stage of idea development and market research is absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I've unfortunately had to have too many conversations with business owners who haven't gone through that process of understanding the demand for a product, or the cost of producing, and what they could sell it for. And unfortunately, I've had the conversation where I've looked at it with a startup founder and said, well, how much can you sell this product for, and how many sales a year realistically will you get? And then what's the cost to produce it? And the cost to produce far outweighed what they were going to get in annual sales. So it wasn't financially viable for them to do it. But if they'd had that conversation before they'd invested over $100,000 into this product,
absolutely,
they would have been in a much better position.
Yeah, and I sort of say also in the book, in the business planning stage, spend a bit of time thinking about what your business model is, what sorts of business partners you have, because again, you can essentially de-risk this launch process by finding a business partner, again, if you're manufacturing, for example, who's prepared to actually, give you a good deal on a very small, initial purchase. And I did say in the book, some will even give you, a free startup products. Obviously, you need to commit to engaging with them if you are successful, but you can de-risk that process quite a bit. And again, the business model, I'll just go back to 10, 20 years or so, you'd have to actually build a factory, or find someone offshore to manufacture in large volume. But now with a lot of the marketplaces and e-commerce sort of procurement platforms, you can quite easily find someone to help get your product to market, even as a prototype or proof of concept, to really test, is this actually saleable, full stop, or is it saleable at the right price point to cover the cost? So I think there's lots and lots of ways to cut to the chase quite quickly to work out if you've got a potentially financially viable business.
Yeah, and I think that's a key thing, because it's a much easier step to refine your process or refine your product or your pricing before you commit to spending a lot of money developing product or paying for product. And we certainly have a lot more tools available for modelling those outcomes. The technology we have available today is
Yeah.
incredible.
It's interesting looking at, we sort of talk a lot about AI in many of the established businesses that I support and advise. And if you look at the AI businesses themselves, and the big ones, ChatGPT, Copilot, and Google's Gemini, since they started, which is probably pretty well 2 years ago now, I think ChatGPT came out, they've actually been refining their product as they're going along as well. In the first few months, they essentially just launched, proof of concepts, have effectively launched it, widely around the world. And, what you use today for any of those three, and there's a myriad of other smaller AI engines out there, is completely different to what their launch products were 2 years ago or more recently. And Google's had quite a lot of well publicized issues with its AI engine, and currently I think it's still called Gemini. But again, they've been refining as they go along. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the big players as well about how quickly they go, well, this is not working, or we want to refine it, or even in some cases, okay, we're going to shut that version down, we're going to start with something new. So I think, and I do say again in the book that founders and business owners, you need to be alert to customer feedback. If there's very specific things customers don't like about the product in the prototype or proof of concept stage, you need to listen to that, because that's telling you what you're likely to get when you do a full-blown launch. And again, I don't see it too often, but you see and hear of founders that are just so wedded to their dream or vision of the product, which may not be actually what the market wants, because they're a little bit too close to the business. So that's also where having some advisors and mentors, as well as co-founders that can challenge rigorously, but professionally, what's proposed or whatever the strategies are, because ultimately that will lead you to success, rather than being single-mindedly focused on whatever the initial dream or vision is.
Yeah, you talk about feedback, and I think that's absolutely crucial. And getting advice from I guess experienced third parties is crucial in that process. I don't want to harp too much on the past, but I just remember clients working on, I guess, what they call the waterfall process, where they develop this product over a long time, and then well, I think the waterfall is because it got to the point and it just dropped off a cliff because there was no longer a demand for that product. But certainly getting advice from different areas. And I think in the toolkit, you would go through which kinds of advice you should be accessing. And
Yeah, I think it. I mean, the book is industry agnostic, so I've tried to write a book that has broad application across all industries. Obviously, there are unique characteristics of products or services in some sectors. I already mentioned, like health, biotech, for example. There'll be very unique, special, and compliance requirements, for example, safety requirements in the health and biotech sector. But I've tried to sort of make it so that anyone can have a bit of a read of it and challenge themselves and think about each of the steps along the way to get that validation that there is demand and it's financially viable to deliver the product or service. I mean, you talked about the waterfall approach. I think it's probably more if you have extended periods of product development before you get to launch. There's a couple of issues that you'll strike potentially. One is there are other products out there already, so they will be continuing to innovate and develop. So your initial market research may have actually changed by the time you get closer to launch. So you need to be thinking and keeping an eye on what's happening in the market. It's very hard to anticipate developments of others in the market. The best remedy will be to move as quickly as you can to get yourself launched. And I think that happily coexists with trying to keep your cash burn rate down, because the longer you go, the more your cash will trail off. So I think there's many benefits to trying to move quickly. And I come from a financial services background, and certainly banks were no poster children for moving quickly. But even banks and financial services firms today, there is a lot of pressure on them to move quickly, because they've got other competitors, established players developing quickly. A lot of them have got innovation labs, innovation centres, and innovation partnerships. And then outside that legacy group of players, you've got new entrants literally popping up every week in financial services. Not all of them will survive, and we've already seen, both here and overseas, a lot of fintechs, crash and burn quite spectacularly. But ultimately, there's still, a lot of money out in the venture capital world to support what are really good ideas and to give them a bit of a run, because again, venture capital doesn't aim for perfection in both businesses or portfolio returns. They really want to have a small number that do exceptionally well and are happy for some of the other investments to fall away on the basis the payoff from the really successful ones more than compensates for that. So I think, and this is probably a bit of the wake-up call for established businesses that aren't innovating, is that you will ultimately be disrupted in some way, and this is across all sectors. The imperative to think about your business strategy, to innovate quickly and take some risks is really there. And one of my other ventures, 52 Risks, which you can probably see the neon sign in the background, it has one of the risks as business model risk, and essentially it's a bit of the catch-all that you need to challenge yourself. Will your business exist in 5 and 10 years' time in its current state? And I challenge many people to answer that as yes without innovation. I think technology will continue to drive whatever changes are happening in your particular industry.
Peter, you've mentioned a phrase a couple of times as we've been speaking. I just want to see if you can unpack that a little bit more. You've mentioned about being too emotionally attached to an idea and ignoring, I guess, the facts around about what's happening in the market. So, what other thoughts can you share in terms of? I know we come up with a great idea. It's our baby. We want it to succeed, but sometimes we get so focused on what we think. There's a few risks there. I
think that there's been many psychology books written around biases, and humans have a whole range of biases, and in the business world it's exactly the same. People are a product of their own sort of environment, business experiences, real world experiences. I think it's not being necessarily too wedded or in love with the product or service that you're looking to build, because I think passion and enthusiasm is important. But at the same time, it's being a realist. And I remember talking to an executive years and years ago who expressed a view about a technology application. It was pretty well, I don't like it. And I did in a fairly blunt way. So, well, to be honest, it doesn't really matter whether you like it or not. It's targeting young professionals, sort of under 40. The market research shows that that's where the demand is. That's the design of the product and the marketing pitch. Whether you or I like it is somewhat irrelevant. And I think that's the reality is, and you see this a lot again. I'm probably moving into mainstream marketing here, but a lot of the consumer goods, a lot of movies, for example, they go and do focus group research, testing, ad nauseum testing. And I think, again, you would have heard the movies. They go and reshoot scenes, they cut scenes out on the basis that, well, our target market for the movie doesn't actually like it. It doesn't resonate. And I think the same goes for startups and all businesses, actually, is really trying to stay in touch with, what your target market or customers are wanting, needing, what they like about your product or service, what they dislike. And even the dislike can just be, it'd be really nice if you added this, this, and this. And again, take that feedback. Again, if you're a startup that's financially constrained, you need to think about, prioritization and also, the bang for your buck. If you deliver the extra bells and whistles and features, people will have to pay for it. Is that demand there? So I think definitely don't be blind to the market feedback. And I do believe, the power of a group is much more important. So if you've got a team working in a startup or a small business, get the diversity of thinking, get the diversity of ideas. And, I think also, today all businesses are technology businesses. It's a cliche, but it's factually correct. And also, I think don't underestimate the marketing smarts that are needed whether it's not just social media sort of strategies, but bringing together your full sort of marketing strategy of traditional marketing mechanisms. Some businesses, word of mouth and person-to-person partnerships are as equally important as having a social media strategy. It just depends what you do, but you need to be doing all of it, and need to be thinking and talking amongst the team about, well, how do we pull this all together so that we've crossed all of the aspects, or all of the success factors will be in place.
Yeah, that's great. So I think, Peter, you mentioned we didn't want to harp too much on the negativity of the things that can go wrong, but I think one of the things you've really highlighted today is the benefits of addressing those risks in your planning process. And in the toolkit, the Startup Toolkit, I think you mentioned 120 different aspects. And that might seem quite staggering if you're thinking about starting a business, but there are a lot of moving parts in here. And the whole reason for the book is to help you create and grow a successful startup. So, Peter, where do our listeners get a copy of the Startup Toolkit?
Yeah, so the book is on the website at the moment, www.goruworld.com, and they can get the ebook by download. There's also a bundled set of tools that are up for sale. By the time this airs, we'll probably be on Amazon. Just a little bit of I's to dot and T's to cross there. But hopefully there. And failing that, feel free to just connect with me, and I'll make sure that you can get access to it. I'm pretty easy to find on the internet these days.
Great. So as always, we'll put links to the website and where to buy the book and how to get in contact with Peter in the show notes, and encourage you to have a look at that. And also, I think, check out some of the pictures and footage from the launch of the book, which was quite spectacular, I believe.
We had a bit of fun in Hong Kong, and again, Goru is looking to sort of engage a younger audience. So we had a full life-size mascot there who was sort of the star of the show in some respects, and it was a bit of fun. And again, I practice what I preach a bit. We're sort of experimenting a little bit. We had some focus groups early on when we were developing the character and the concept, and it was interesting. One of the big debates was, should the character have a sword or not? And unanimously, everyone under the age of 25 said the character needs a sword. I was sitting on the fence a little bit, and one of my best friends, former business colleague, he said definitely no sword. And I did tell him, I said, well, the focus group have outvoted you. The character needs a sword. So we had a bit of fun. It's. I mean, as I said, I'm very passionate about sort of giving back a little bit and spreading a bit of my knowledge to all sectors of the business community, including aspiring entrepreneurs. And this has been lots of fun to do. So thanks again for showing interest, Paul.
Not a problem. We are excited about we're excited about business. We're excited about small business, startup business, and particularly products, tools, and advice that help business owners achieve great success in starting up a business and running it profitably, efficiently, and successfully. So appreciate your time today, Peter, and thank you for being on the business behind your business.
Fantastic, Paul.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favourite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions, because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.